Welcome to the Set to Lead podcast, the online mentoring platform for emerging and current leaders. My name is Marianne Samdi, leadership coach and talent development expert, and I will be your host.
Hey, Donna, welcome to the show. Thank you, Marianne. My pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Oh, I'm so happy and excited to start talking to you today.
Likewise.
I thought I'd start by having you tell us about your journey to becoming a nurse and now entrepreneur.
Sure. Well, when I was younger in high school, I was very interested in science and loved helping people, and nursing seemed like the perfect career path for me. And indeed it was. I would say when I started in nursing, I saw myself perhaps primarily working in the hospital. I wound up falling in love with the emergency room, which is work that I did for a while. But I soon discovered that nursing actually offered many, many different paths within the nursing profession. It's really the most diverse profession on the planet. And as the years went by, a lot of different types of opportunities came my way. So after being in the profession for a number of years, I wound up being hired by a hospital as a nurse who would be in charge of a lot of changing regulatory issues in healthcare at the time. And in that role, I was asked to start speaking to the community, to physicians, to other employees, and I did not want to do that. In fact, they didn't mention public speaking when they hired me. If they had, I probably wouldn't have taken the job, because sometimes we have to be literally kicked out of our comfort zone. But I told my new boss, oh, no, I don't want to do that. I'm not a speaker. I'm not comfortable in front of people. And he said to me, you will speak to the community, the physicians, the employees. So he wasn't asking me. He was telling me.
Wow.
So I began to do some speaking on things that were changing, things that we needed to do in healthcare. And as I did a little more of it, I started to become a little more comfortable with it. I guess my inner comedian was able to come out at the same time. Also, I found that because my role in nursing was a non-traditional one, I had a lot of nurses coming up to me, asking me, they'd say things like, wow, how did you get this job? What else are nurses doing out there? Could you look at my resume? I'm applying for a supervisor's job, kind of coming to me for career advice. And I thought, well, that's interesting. The average nurse isn't aware of what's available out there, or really not sure how to market themselves. During that same time, also, I met a nurse who was a professional speaker, and I never knew there was such a thing at that time. She actually traveled around the country, spoke at different conferences and hospitals, and got paid to speak. I thought that was fascinating. So with all of this going on, I thought, gee, maybe someday I could do that, and perhaps I could offer seminars for nurses to teach them about all the different opportunities available in healthcare. And I had that idea, Marianne, for a good 10 years before I actually acted on it. And I know we'll get into that more a little bit, perhaps further in our conversation. But I was at a time in my life where I was at a real transition. I was actually on the verge of turning 40. And I felt like there was something more, something bigger for me to do in the world. I just thought I wasn't sure what it was, but I had that idea rolling around in my head for 10 years about starting a business, launching public seminars for nurses. And I finally decided to do it in 1995 and got my business off the ground at that time.
Wow. And you're doing really well with it, Donna.
Well,
like
22 years later, 22 years later, I've worked very, very hard to get to where I am today. And of course, I gave you the very abbreviated version of the story, and lots has happened in between. But I made a commitment, Marianne, when I started that business, that I was going to do everything it took to make the business work. I didn't know if anybody would want to come to my seminars, for example, but I thought, well, if nobody comes to the seminars, I'll either improve the seminar, do a different seminar, market it in a different way, market it to different people. I was committed to making it work no matter what it took. And a big motivator was that I wanted to just try it. I had no way of knowing how it would work out or if it would work out. but I didn't want to live with regret. I didn't want to live the rest of my life or be on my deathbed saying, gosh, I wonder what would have happened if I ever tried that. I wonder what I could have made of that or made of myself. So I decided to just give it a try, and I'd rather go down in a blaze of glory than never having tried at all.
Yeah. How much do you think confidence has to do with your success in business?
Well, the funny thing is, Marianne, that I really had no confidence when I started my business, and people see me today, 22 years later, they see the business owner and the woman and the nurse that I have become, and they assume that that's where I was when I started my business. But in fact, I was at a low point when I started my business. I actually was feeling very lost in my life and my career. I just didn't really know what to do with my life. I wasn't feeling particularly happy. But I say sometimes you have to scrape bottom before you can start reaching for the top. Sometimes you really have to lose yourself before you can truly find yourself. So my confidence was at zero. It was possibly at sub-zero at that time. But I did have a dream and a vision, and that's what propelled me. My confidence has built in increments since that time, and the more I have gotten out of my comfort zone, the more things that I have done, the more I've gotten out in the world, the more I have accumulated some level of confidence. But people in general would probably be very surprised to find that many people in roles that they perceive as successful still have a lot of issues of not feeling confident in many situations. They're still always worrying that, they're going to, something's going to change for them the next day or whatever. So confidence is important to a point at some point in your life, but it's definitely not necessary to get started or to try anything. And nobody's got confidence when they do something for the first time. Sometimes you have to fake it till you make it, and then you build a bridge as you're walking across.
Yeah, you're right about that. But there are some people who have trouble walking across. I see a lot of self-sabotaging traits among women in the workplace, one being a lack of self-confidence. For those that are stuck in a low self-confident rut, what can someone do if they're weak in that area and bridge across to a better place?
Well, one thing that is very important and that has been very helpful to me is surrounding myself with other successful women. And when I started in business, I read in a magazine about a group called the National Association of Women Business Owners, in my case, and I decided to look up where the organization met locally. And I remember going out to my very first meeting, and I walked into a room filled with women who were very successful, motivated, upbeat. They were also very warm and welcoming to me when I came in. And it felt like electricity in the air meeting all of these women. And when they went around the room and introduced themselves, some of them had multi-million-dollar manufacturing businesses or employment businesses. And I thought, oh my gosh, if these women can do these big things, certainly I can do what I perceived as a little thing at the time. And I remember leaving that first meeting after that night and saying, I felt like I could conquer the world. And I thought, wow, I have got to come back to this. So I joined and got active in that organization in the beginning, and finding other people successfully doing the things that you want to do, whether it's being in business, whether it's being a writer, a speaker, whatever it might be, that is really critically important, because those people are going to pull you along. They're going to lift you up. They're going to support you. Sometimes you have to believe in somebody else's belief in you before your own belief kicks in. So when I went to that meeting and I told women, they said, oh, tell us about your business or the business you want to start. And I told them, they were like, that's great. You can do it. How can we help you? Whereas I had other people in my life outside of that circle saying to me, Donna, are you crazy? This is a terrible time to start a business. You can't make any money at that. Nobody comes out to seminars. You have to get sponsors. So there were plenty of naysayers around that really feed into our insecurities and self-doubt and fears. But you have to find those people that are supportive, successful, and positive, and hang out with those people. because there's a lot of research, as I'm sure you and many of your listeners have heard, that we become like the 5 people that we spend most of our time with. And so it's important to find people that we aspire to be like, to spend time with, whether it's through associations, through work, through organizations, and so on. That's a big thing.
Yeah. So, hang out with eagles and you're going to soar.
Exactly. And you can't stay isolated either. Some of us that feel, don't have confidence or whatever, even when I was first starting the business, you spend too much time alone in your head and your fears become magnified. So you can't stay isolated. You need to be with other people, but you have to be selective about the people that you spend your time with.
Okay. Donna, you have a lot of books out there in the pipeline, so I wanted to take some time to introduce our listeners to some of your writings. I know your newest one is called Falling Together, How to Find Balance, Joy, and Meaningful Change When Your Life Seems to Be Falling Apart. I think a lot of people out there can relate to that. Talk to us about this book and the value it brings to the everyday leader.
Yeah, well, thanks. That book was a little different from my first 3 books, which were more career-related for nurses. This book was very different for me. First of all, I tell some of my own personal stories of challenge and change, but the book is not for the explicit purpose of others learning about me, but I use my own life stories and lessons as a platform for others to glean lessons to apply to their own life. So you may not have had my exact experiences in life, but hopefully you will be able to somehow see yourself in various situations and scenarios that I describe. And as I said, use some of the lessons that I learned that I summarize at the end of each chapter. So some of us don't talk a lot about the challenges we have in life, and I discovered that very often, we look at people who maybe look successful or happy and seem to have a nice house and nice clothes and whatever. Sometimes we envy these people, and we don't realize that they've got a lot of challenges. They're carrying a heavy load, and really everybody has heavy burdens that they're carrying. So I wanted to share some of my own stories, as I said, of not only of challenge and change, but really of overcoming fear and other obstacles in my life, learning to be resilient, learning to take better care of myself after I almost completely burnt myself out from doing so much, including caring for a family member. I'm a family caregiver, lots of other things. And so I call the book a self-help memoir because I do tell some of my own stories, but it is for the purpose of self-help. It's a pretty short book. It's easy, light reading, even though there are perhaps a few heavy parts, but lots of humor in there. And people tell me that it's an easy read, a good beach read. Some people read it in the course of one day, tell me they can't put it down and can't stop reading it. Tried to make the stories compelling. I underscored some universal life lessons in there. And many people are telling me that they can relate to it on so many different levels.
So, Donna, what's a universal life lesson around divorce? Because I know you talk about your divorce in the book, and I know there's a lot of workplace leaders and professionals that have been through a divorce or going through one now. What's a life lesson, or should I say leadership lesson, that you can share with us?
Well, that's a perfect example to bring up, because when I was going through a divorce, you think that it's the end of the world. It's the most horrible thing that could happen. You think you're the only one. But it's amazing how many people have the same story to tell. But when I was going through my divorce, and divorce was not initially my choice at all, when I went through everything that I went through and came out on the other end of it, I learned, first of all, that I'm really capable of doing much more than I ever thought that I could on my own. I discovered that I was actually stronger than I thought I was, than I knew I was, and that very often happens when we're thrown into really challenging situations. And again, sometimes life's challenges literally fling us out of our comfort zone, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because if left to our own devices, it's so easy to fall into a rut in life. You know, we get into a routine, even if we're not completely happy. Some of us just stay in a unhappy situation. It could be a job, it could be a relationship. That was probably the case with me. But when we're forced to move in another direction, or as I said, get thrown out of our comfort zone, it's really an opportunity for us to stretch, to grow, to open our eyes to new opportunities, and to move forward to a new life. So if you had asked me back then if I would ever be where I am today, I would have never believed that. But I had to grow up a lot in the process and move forward. Again, sometimes I think that fate plays a hand, and challenging times come to all of us to help us build a bridge to a better life. When we're in the situation, it doesn't seem that way, but I think sometimes these things shock us into moving forward with our life, and as I said, building a bridge to a new life.
Wow. I think a lot of people can probably relate to that. You talk a lot about a lot of other life I tend to call them life distractions, but life tragedies. You talk about caregiving. There's a lot of professionals out there who have that caregiving responsibility. And while they have that responsibility, they still have to show up at work. How do you prevent major burnout when you're a caregiver and still trying to balance work and life?
Yeah, well, that's such an important question, Marianne. And as I mentioned, I did almost burn myself out at one time. When my husband became sick the year I started my business, I went back to school. I became president of a professional association. I wrote my first book, if I didn't say that already. And all I was doing was just continuously putting out energy physically, emotionally, spiritually, not taking any time to replenish any of that energy. And I woke up one morning and I felt like I just didn't care about any aspect of my life anymore. I wanted to get on a plane and fly to Bali and not leave any forwarding address. And I didn't even care that morning about this business that I had worked so hard to build, that I had dreamed so long about. Because what I had done to myself is I had just literally expended almost all of my energy. I still had a little bit left, or I might have been in much worse shape. But when that happened to me that morning, and I thought, I don't care about anything or anyone anymore, I just want to get on a plane and leave, I had the presence of mind to realize and reflect on what was happening to me, that I had just completely burned myself out. And desperate situations call for desperate measures. So I knew I had to do something to take care of myself, to try to regain some of my equilibrium, some of my energy, some of my balance. And what I did back then, one of the first things I did was I joined a health club that was nearby. And the thing is, I always say I joined a health club, but I didn't. I said I joined a health club, but I didn't say I started working out, which usually makes people chuckle. I didn't necessarily see myself going and working out at the gym, but I decided to join this gym because they had a jacuzzi in the ladies' locker room. Believe it or not, that was the reason that I joined, because I thought, wow, I could leave home and go just a few blocks away and sit and relax in this jacuzzi. And
you're my type of lady, Donna. That's what I like, the jacuzzi.
Yeah. I thought, wow, I don't have to wait until I go to a nice hotel to sit in a jacuzzi somewhere. Mm-hmm. So I joined the gym, and I always felt guilty about leaving my disabled husband home. I had to leave for business, but certainly felt more guilty doing things for myself. But I somehow felt a little less guilty going to the gym. And so I'd get my gym bag and I'd, go off and say, hey, I'm going to the gym. And I'd go to the gym. I'd lock up my gym bag and my cell phone in the locker room, and I would sit in that jacuzzi and just, tune everything out for a while. And it was respite for me, Marianne. It was something to get me out of the house and just to focus on myself. And then eventually I had my first massage, which I had always avoided because it just seemed like such an awkward situation to me. But after meeting a lovely, very low-key massage therapist, and I had my first massage, it was so healing for me that I began to do that on a more regular basis. And then as time went on, I also realized that because I work so hard at my business and I put so much energy into my family, just as passionately as I engage in those activities, I have to as passionately, periodically disengage from my business and even from my home responsibilities when I can, get somebody to cover for me or whatever, and just spend some time focusing on myself, taking care of my own needs. It doesn't have to be a lot of time, but a little bit of time to myself each day or each week, and a couple of days to myself every year. I actually take a vacation by myself right now. I'm able to make arrangements for my husband and my family. And sometimes people will say, oh, I can't do that. It's not possible. We talk ourselves into believing it's not possible, but we've never actually tried to make arrangements to cover for us when we're away for home life, for business, whatever it is. We kind of get a thing in our head that we're so indispensable in our life, but it's always possible to get away if you need to, and sometimes we're the obstacle really to not getting that time off, if that makes any sense.
It makes total sense. And I'm here, I'm laid back in my chair and I'm thinking, yes, jacuzzi, massage, those work for me, Donna. But there's some people that are listening that it sounds good to them, but they may not make the effort to take those self-care steps because they think they're not worthy of being supported. They're not worthy of being cared for. Is there anything that you could say that talks to why they are worthy?
Yeah. And you know what? I don't want to use the word worthy, because then it becomes like a reward system, and I always say self-care is not a reward. It's not pampering. It's not a luxury. It's simply routine maintenance for mind, body, and spirit. It's not that yes, do we deserve it and are we worthy? Yes, but those are words and concepts that are very difficult for most of us. So I don't even use that. It's routine maintenance for the body, mind, and spirit. Just like if you let your car run out of oil and gas and you never took it for a tune-up, it's just going to completely collapse on you one day when you're driving, and it may even be beyond repair. So that's really what self-care is for each of us. It's not a luxury. It's not pampering. It's not a reward. It's simply routine maintenance for the body, mind, and spirit. It's a way of putting some of that energy back in to allow us to more passionately engage in the work that we do every day for our family, for our business, for our community. And, there's an old expression that says when you work hard, you have to play hard. What that really means is that when you're expending a lot of energy, you have to take equal time to step back, not even equal time in terms of hours, but you have to put as much effort into replenishing your energy as you do with expending your energy. Now, I talk about jacuzzi and massages, and some people would say, oh, sure, Donna, you can afford things like that, joining a club, going for a massage, but I can't. It's not about those activities. That was just the beginning of my journey into self-care, but self-care can be spending some time alone. And you know where I find some alone time sometimes, Marianne? I know what churches and houses of worship in my community stay unlocked during the day. Some of them lock their doors, but some of them do not. And I very often will go and sit in a local house of worship. It doesn't even matter what the religious denomination is, but I'm very often there by myself, or there are very few people. I have quiet time to just sit. I can pray if I want to. I can just contemplate. I can meditate. I love to go outside when I can, whether it's sitting in my backyard or to a local park. I even love to go still to the public library. The public library is a great way to disengage. You just walk through the stacks and you run your finger across the book spines and go in the biography section or the geography section or any area that is of interest to you. The library can also be a wonderfully educational and inspirational place to go. So there's lots of free things right in our community, not even far away, to help us replenish our soul and just get a little time to ourselves. When you don't spend any alone time or any quiet time, it's very easy to lose perspective on what's happening with you, what's happening in your life, to even know whether you're happy or not in what you're doing.
Yes. Yes.
So many of
yes.
us, we operate on automatic pilot. We get up every morning, we do the same thing that we did yesterday, we go to sleep, and we do the same thing again the next day. And we never take time to stop and reflect on whether we even enjoy what we're doing right now, or what else we might want to do, or where we might want to go from here.
I just want to stand up and applause. You get a standing ovation from me. Yes, yes. And maybe we can dive into that whole concept of everyone's in a rush and not a lot of people have the time to stand still and do exactly what you just said on another show. But before we move on, Donna, tell everyone what's the best way to follow your work and upcoming events.
Yes, thanks, Marianne. Well, first of all, everything's on my website at donnacardillo.com, just like my name, Donna Cardillo, just like it sounds.com. And all of my events are listed there, my books, all of my social media icons. I'm very active on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and Facebook. And you can friend me on Facebook. I have a couple of pages on Facebook. I post something every single day that is motivational or inspirational. I'm also in other areas too, and that's just a great way to keep track of what I'm doing. I have a couple of blogs there. I do an inspirational blog. I have a blog for nurses, and I also blog at droz.com where I write some health articles for the general population.
And is Amazon the best place they can go to seek your book?
Well, everything is on Amazon for sure, but I always encourage people to support our local brick and mortar community stores as well, such as Barnes & Noble and even small local independently owned bookstores, even better yet.
Donna, let me give you a virtual hug. Thank you so much for being part of the show today.
Right back at you, Marianne.